Captain Lee Hyun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance watching the massive alien fleet move closer to the human colony of New Seoul. The ships were huge and dark against the stars. Each one was bigger than anything humans had ever built. The Vorthak Empire had sent their best warships to deliver their final message. 3 days ago, the message had come through official channels. The Vorthak Empire demanded that all human colonies surrender immediately. Any resistance would result in the complete destruction of humanity as a species. They gave humans 1 week to decide. The galaxy had spoken, and humanity was not welcome. Lee Hyun had been a soldier for 20 years. He had served on patrol ships keeping peace between human worlds. He had escorted diplomatic missions to alien capitals. He had always believed that talking was better than fighting. His whole career had been built on the idea that reasonable people could solve any problem. Ambassador Park Mina had spent 15 years trying to get humans a seat on the Galactic Council. She had traveled to every major alien world. She had learned 12 different languages. She had studied alien customs and cultures. She had made friends with diplomats from species across the galaxy. None of it mattered now. The aliens saw humans as children playing at being adults. They controlled small worlds on the edge of known space, while the real powers divided up the galaxy among themselves. The Vorthak were tall reptilian creatures, with scales that changed color when they were angry. Their weapons could turn planets into glass. Their ships could travel faster than anything humans had built. Commander Kim Tae was monitoring all frequencies, trying to understand what was happening. He had been listening to alien communications for hours. The different species were all talking about the human problem. Some wanted to relocate humans to prison worlds. Others wanted to divide human colonies among themselves. None of them considered letting humans keep what they had built. The Galactic Council had met an emergency session to decide humanity's fate. The vote was not even close. 47 species voted to relocate humans to reservation worlds. Only 3 species abstained from voting. No one voted to support human rights. The decision was final and could not be appealed. Engineer Oh-soo was working frantically in the engine room. She had been ordered to prepare the ship for maximum combat readiness. The Defiance had not been built for war. It was an exploration vessel with light weapons and weak shields, but Oh-soo was making modifications that would let them fight against impossible odds. Medical Officer Choi Won was converting the sick bay into a trauma center. She knew that within hours they would be treating wounded soldiers. The peaceful mission of exploration and diplomacy was ending. The age of human warfare was about to begin. The bridge crew watched as more alien ships arrived. Every hour brought new vessels from different species. The crystalline hegemony sent their diamond-shaped warships. The Void Touched arrived in ships that seemed to bend light around them. The Metal Collective brought vessels that looked like flying cities. Lee Hyun had received his orders from Earth Command: fight if you must. But remember that humanity still hopes for peace. The captain knew those orders were already meaningless. The time for peace had ended when the aliens decided humans did not deserve to exist as equals. Young Ensign Anbo was at the communications station. She had just graduated from the academy 6 months ago. She had studied alien languages because she wanted to help with diplomatic missions. Now she was translating threats and ultimatums instead of trade agreements and cultural exchanges. The alien fleet commander sent a final message to the human colony. The words were translated into simple human language. You have 6 hours to begin evacuation. All human military vessels will power down their weapons and prepare for escort to designated relocation zones. Any resistance will result in immediate destruction. Park Mina was in her quarters, writing what she knew would be her final diplomatic report. She had tried everything. Gifts did not work. Compromises were rejected. Appeals to justice fell on deaf ears. The aliens had made their decision based on power, not on right or wrong. The colony below had 3 million people. They had farms and factories and schools and hospitals. They had built cities and planted forests and created art. They had made New Seoul into a real home. The aliens wanted to give it all away to species that had never worked for any of it. Captain Lee Hyun walked through his ship looking at his crew. They were scared, but they were ready. They had all joined the service to explore new worlds and meet new species. Now they were preparing to fight and die for the right to exist. The peaceful dream of humanity was ending. The alien ultimatum was clear: surrender everything or watch everything burn. There would be no negotiation, no compromise, no appeal to higher authority. The galaxy had decided that humans were too young and too weak to deserve their own world's communications. Officer Yang Min was sending messages to every human ship and station in the sector. She was telling them what was happening. She was warning them that the age of diplomacy was over. The time had come for humanity to show what they were really capable of. The captain activated the emergency broadcast system. His message would reach every human world, every human ship, every human station across known space. The words he chose were simple, but they carried the weight of history and the promise of vengeance. He looked directly into the camera, knowing that millions of humans would see his face and hear his words. The time for talking is over. The galaxy has made their choice. Now they will learn what happens when you push humanity too far. We tried to be your friends. We tried to be your partners. Now you will discover what we are like as your enemies. The message was sent across faster than light communications to every corner of human space. Within hours, every human military commander would know that the war had begun. Within days, every human world would be preparing for the fight of their species' existence. The alien fleet was moving into attack position. The Vorthak commander was confident that the humans would surrender when they saw the overwhelming force arrayed against them. He had studied human psychology and believed they were too civilized to fight a war. They could not win. Captain Li Hyun gave his final order as a peacekeeping officer. All stations prepare for combat. We are no longer explorers. We are no longer diplomats, we are soldiers. And we will show these aliens what human soldiers can do when they fight for their homes and their families and their future. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been holding back. For 50 years they had been patient and reasonable and hopeful. They had tried to build a better universe through cooperation and understanding. That time was over. Now they would build their future through fire and determination, and the ancient human art of warfare. Dr. Yang Min had been deep in the archives of Luna Base when the emergency broadcasts began. She was the head of human military history, a job that had seemed almost pointless for the past 50 years. Humanity had been at peace for so long that most people forgot they had ever been warriors. The archives contained thousands of years of human warfare, from the first stone tools to the last great war on Earth. The calls started coming within hours. Fleet commanders from across human space were asking for tactical advice. They wanted to know how humans had fought wars before they reached the stars. They needed to understand what their species was capable of when diplomacy failed. Yang Min realized that her research was about to become the most important knowledge in human space. She began uploading files to every military network: ancient battle plans from Earth wars, psychological studies of human combat behavior, analysis of how human soldiers performed under impossible odds. The galaxy was about to discover that humans had been the most warlike species on their home planet for millions of years. Captain Songhai commanded the mining station Prosperity deep in the asteroid belt. When the Vorthak fleet arrived to demand surrender, they expected the usual human compliance. Instead, they found mining lasers that had been converted into weapons. They found miners who had become soldiers overnight. They found humans who were ready to die rather than submit. The battle lasted only 2 hours, but it changed everything. The aliens had never seen humans fight with desperation before. They had never faced an enemy that preferred death to defeat. 3 Vorthak ships were destroyed by what should have been a helpless mining operation. The alien survivors retreated in confusion and fear. News of the mining station. Victory spread through human networks faster than official communications. On agricultural world, New Busan farmer Bei Jun was organizing his neighbors into resistance cells. The aliens wanted to relocate humans to prison worlds, but they would find empty colonies instead. Every human world was preparing not just to fight, but to disappear rather than surrender. The transformation was happening everywhere. Cargo ships were being converted into troop transports. Research stations were becoming weapons laboratories. Merchant vessels were being armed for raids against alien supply lines. The species that had seemed so reasonable in diplomatic meetings was revealing its true nature. Intelligence Officer Imuri was intercepting alien communications from across the galaxy. The different species were confused and worried. They had expected quick human surrender, followed by peaceful relocation. Instead, they were getting reports of human resistance from every sector. Some aliens were starting to question whether they understood humanity at all. The Galactic Council met in emergency session to discuss the unexpected human response. Several species were demanding stronger action against human resistance. Others were suggesting that maybe they should reconsider the relocation decision. The Vorthak Empire insisted that more force would bring quick human surrender. On Earth, the old weapons factories were being reopened. Manufacturing facilities that had been converted to peaceful uses were switching back to military production. Humans who had never seen war were learning how to build the tools of destruction. The planet that had been peaceful for centuries was becoming an arsenal admiral. Kang Su was reviewing tactical reports from across human space. Every engagement showed the same pattern. Humans were fighting with a ferocity that shocked their alien opponents. They were using tactics that no civilized species would consider. They were willing to accept casualties that would break the morale of any other army. The psychological warfare had already begun. Human hackers were breaking into alien communication networks, spreading stories of human atrocities that had never happened. The goal was to make the aliens afraid before the real fighting started. Fear was often more powerful than weapons in determining who won battles. Commander Ryu Yun was leading the first human raids into alien space. Her ship, the Retribution, had been modified with weapons that violated several galactic warfare treaties, but humans had never signed those treaties, and they were discovering that unlimited warfare gave them advantages that civilized species did not possess. The mining guilds were providing detailed maps of asteroid fields and hidden stations that could be used as bases for guerrilla operations. The merchant marine was offering their knowledge of trade routes that could be used to strike alien supply lines. The civilian population was becoming part of the war effort in ways that confused alien intelligence services on New Sol, the planet where the war had started. Scientist Dr. An Bo was completing modifications to the atmospheric processors. The aliens thought they were dealing with terraforming equipment designed to make worlds more suitable for human life. Instead, they were being converted into weapons that could make alien life impossible. The transformation of human society was complete within weeks. The species that had spent 50 years trying to prove they were civilized was now proving they were the most effective killers in the galaxy. Every human world was becoming a fortress. Every human ship was becoming a weapon. Every human citizen was becoming a soldier. The aliens were beginning to understand their mistake. They had assumed that human peace meant human weakness. They had never studied human history. They had never learned about the species that had conquered their homeworld through 10,000 years of constant warfare. They had pushed the wrong enemy too far. Young people who had grown up in peaceful times were learning the songs and stories of their warrior ancestors. They were discovering that their species had a talent for violence that had been hidden but never lost. The galaxy was about to face an enemy that had been holding back their true nature for decades. The awakening was complete. Humanity had remembered what it was like to be the apex predator of their home world. They had remembered the joy of victory and the satisfaction of destroying their enemies. The species that had tried to be peaceful was returning to its natural state of war. Captain Song Hayes sent a message to all human forces that would become their unofficial motto. We tried to be civilized. We tried to be reasonable. We tried to be peaceful. Now we will show the galaxy what we are really good at. The message was transmitted across human space and became the rallying cry for the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen. The first major battle came at Harmony Station, a massive human trading hub near the border of Vorthak. Space Admiral Kang Su commanded the defense with only 12 military vessels against a Vorthak fleet of 60 ships. The aliens were confident this would be an easy victory. Their ships were larger, their weapons were more advanced, and their numbers were overwhelming. The Vorthak had forgotten that humans were the species that had turned everything into weapons throughout their history. Farming tools had become swords. Mining equipment had become siege engines. Peaceful technology had always become military technology when humans needed it to. The trading station was about to become a fortress. Kang Su used tactics that no civilized species would consider. His ships performed ramming attacks, sacrificing themselves to destroy multiple enemy vessels. He coordinated suicide runs where single human ships would overload their reactors to take out Vorthak command ships. He turned every piece of station equipment into a weapon. The battle lasted 18 hours. When the fighting ended, 43 Vorthak ships had been destroyed or disabled. The human losses were severe, but the message was clear. Humanity would pay any price to win. They would sacrifice anything to protect their freedom. They would turn every battle into a nightmare for their enemies. Captain Ryu Yun was leading counterattacks on 3 fronts simultaneously. Her ship, the Retribution, had been equipped with weapons that violated every galactic treaty about civilized warfare. The aliens had written those treaties to limit conflict among species that valued life. But humans had never signed those agreements. The galaxy was learning that humans fought wars differently than other species. Most alien conflicts were about territory or resources, with rules about protecting civilians and limiting damage. Human war was about survival, which meant there were no rules about what was acceptable. Every target was fair game. The Galactic Council met again as reports flooded in from across human space. Every alien force sent to pacify human worlds faced resistance that shocked them. Human ships were appearing deep in alien territory, attacking military bases, supply lines, and civilian infrastructure. Species that had not fought real wars for centuries were learning what total war meant. On New Sol, the world that the Vorthak had chosen for their first major conquest, Dr. An Bo had completed her atmospheric modifications. The alien invasion force landed expecting to face human soldiers with conventional weapons. Instead, they found the air itself becoming poisonous to their biology. Human ingenuity, focused on destruction instead of creation, was proving more terrifying than any conventional weapon. Systems designed to make worlds suitable for human life were being reversed to make them deadly for alien life. The Vorthak troops began dying within hours of landing. The psychological impact was immediate. Alien forces across the galaxy received reports of an enemy that could turn planets themselves into weapons. Species that had thought they understood warfare were facing tactics they had never imagined. The humans were not just fighting to win, they were fighting to teach their enemies fear. Intelligence reports showed that several alien species were reconsidering their support for the war. The smaller powers that had voted for human relocation were starting to worry about what would happen when human forces reached their worlds. The unity of the anti-human alliance was beginning to crack. Young Officer Nam Ri was documenting the effects of human tactics on alien psychology. Species that had lived in peace for thousands of years were experiencing existential terror for the first time. Many alien soldiers were refusing orders to attack human positions. Some entire units were deserting rather than face human forces. The siege of 3 Vorthak colony worlds began simultaneously. Human forces surrounded each world and began systematic destruction of anything that could support life. The aliens had expected conventional warfare with battles between military forces. Instead, they found humans willing to destroy everything. To win, Captain Lee Hyun now commanded a battle group that moved through alien space like a storm. His forces struck targets that should have been impossible to reach. They attacked from directions that should have been impossible. They used weapons that should not have existed. The predictable warfare of civilized species was being replaced by human chaos. The mining operations in the asteroid belts became mobile fortresses. Human miners who had become soldiers were using their knowledge of space construction to build hidden bases. Alien patrols would find empty space where intelligence reported human activity. Then human ships would appear from concealed positions and destroy entire fleets. The merchant marine was conducting unrestricted warfare against alien trade. Every civilian ship carrying supplies to alien worlds was a legitimate target in human eyes. The distinction between military and civilian targets was disappearing, as humans demonstrated that they considered the entire alien population to be enemy combatants. Communications across the galaxy were carrying stories of human atrocities. Some were true, but many were exaggerated. The goal was to make every alien species afraid of what humans might do to them. Fear was becoming a weapon more powerful than any ship or gun. The transformation of human society was accelerating. Children were learning military skills in school. Citizens were training for guerrilla warfare in case their worlds were invaded. Art and literature were celebrating the glory of war and the joy of victory over enemies. The peaceful civilization of the past 50 years was being replaced by a warrior culture, Admiral Park. Du was preparing the next phase of human strategy. The galaxy had seen human defensive capabilities and human raiding tactics. Now they would see human siege warfare. Human forces were gathering around major alien worlds, preparing to demonstrate what happened when the most patient species in the galaxy decided to take their time destroying their enemies. The burning had begun. Every alien world that had supported human relocation was now a target. Every species that had voted against human rights was now facing human vengeance. The galaxy was learning that humanity remembered every insult, every rejection, every moment of dismissal. The war was no longer about territory. It was about teaching the galaxy respect. Within 6 months, the war had spread far beyond human space. Captain Lee Hyun commanded a battle group that appeared throughout alien territory like a storm. The crystalline hegemony, the Vorthak Empire, and 3 other major powers had formed the Grand Alliance against humanity. Their combined fleets outnumbered human forces by 10 to 1, but numbers alone were not enough. Engineer John C. had discovered the secret to human success. Human ships were being rebuilt to operate beyond their design limits. While alien vessels were constructed for safety and long service life, human ships were being pushed to their absolute maximum performance. Human crews accepted casualty rates that would break alien morale, but their willingness to risk everything gave them tactical advantages. The siege of Vorthak Prime became the symbol of human determination. Admiral Park Du surrounded the alien homeworld with 30 ships against a defending force of over 200. The aliens believed they could outlast the siege, but they had never faced human patience when it was focused on Destruction Park. Du had brought something worse than weapons to the siege. He had brought time and the absolute determination to watch an entire civilization die slowly. The human blockade was complete. Nothing could reach the planet's surface. Nothing could leave. Food supplies began running low within months. Medical officer Nam Ri was documenting the psychological collapse of alien populations across the galaxy. Species that had never experienced existential fear were breaking under the pressure of human warfare. Entire alien civilizations were experiencing mass panic as their citizens realized they might actually lose the war. The smaller alien nations were abandoning the Grand Alliance faster than their governments could prevent. Ambassador Li Ji was not negotiating for peace. She was accepting surrenders. Species that had dismissed human diplomatic efforts were now begging for human mercy. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting with every battle. Human forces were using tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They targeted civilian infrastructure to create refugee crises. They broadcast propaganda designed to break alien morale. They used captured alien soldiers as sources of intelligence through methods that made alien commanders afraid to be taken alive. The siege warfare was particularly effective against species that had forgotten how to endure hardship. The crystalline hegemony had not experienced food shortages for over 1,000 years. When human raids cut their supply lines, their population began riots that destroyed more infrastructure than human weapons. Captain Song Hai was now commanding occupation forces on conquered alien worlds. The miners and farmers who had become soldiers were finding it easier to remain soldiers than return to civilian life. War had changed them in ways that made peaceful existence feel boring and meaningless. The galaxy was experiencing something it had not seen for millions of years. A species conducting unlimited warfare without any concern for the rules that governed civilized conflict. Humans were demonstrating that they had never really been civilized. They had only been patient while they learned about their enemies. Intelligence officer Imuri was analyzing captured alien communications. The enemy governments were losing control of their populations. Fear of human retaliation was causing mass migrations. away from border worlds. Some species were considering surrender before human forces even attacked their territory. The psychological warfare was proving as effective as direct military action. Human hackers were flooding alien communication networks with images and stories designed to break enemy morale. The aliens were learning about human history for the first time and discovering that their enemies had been warriors for millions of years. Young soldiers like Ensign Anbo were becoming veterans, faster than their training had prepared them for the peaceful generation that had grown up believing in diplomacy, was learning to take pride in victory and satisfaction in the defeat of their enemies. The transformation of human culture was accelerating. The siege of Vorthak Prime entered its 8th month. The planet that had once been the center of a galactic empire was becoming a tomb. Admiral Park. To broadcast daily messages to the dying population, reminding them that this was the price of threatening humanity. The psychological impact on other alien worlds was devastating. Human raids were reaching deeper into alien space every week. Targets that should have been protected by multiple defense fleets were being attacked and destroyed. Industrial centers that had operated for centuries were being reduced to radioactive debris. The alien capacity to wage war was being systematically eliminated. The Grand Alliance was beginning to fracture under the pressure of human attacks. Species that had been allies for thousands of years were blaming each other for the disaster. Several governments had fallen when their populations learned the true extent of human military capabilities. The unity that had seemed so strong was proving to be fragile. Captain Ryu-Un was leading the most daring raids in human military history. Her forces were appearing in the heart of alien space, destroying targets and disappearing before enemy reinforcements could respond. The aliens had never faced an enemy that could strike anywhere at any time with no warning. The occupation governments on conquered alien worlds were surprisingly stable. Many alien populations were discovering that human rule was harsh but predictable. The certainty of human dominance was preferable. To the chaos of continued resistance, life under human authority was difficult. But it was still life. Human industry was producing war materials at rates that impressed even human commanders. Factories that had made consumer goods for 50 years were manufacturing weapons and ships. Citizens who had never seen military equipment were working overtime to supply the war effort. The entire human economy had become a war machine. The burning of the galaxy continued. Every major alien world was either under attack, under siege, or preparing for human assault. The species that had voted to relocate humanity were learning what it meant to face an enemy that never forgot an insult and never forgave a threat. The age of alien dominance was ending. 2 years after the collapse of diplomacy, the galaxy was transformed beyond recognition. The Vorthak Empire existed only as scattered refugee fleets hiding in the outer systems. The crystalline hegemony had surrendered after losing half their worlds to human occupation. 3 other major powers had agreed to human peace terms rather than face complete annihilation. Fleet Admiral Cho Wan stood in the ruins of the former Galactic Council chambers. The building that had once excluded human representatives now served as headquarters for the human colonial administration. The irony was not lost on her. The species that had been denied a voice in galactic politics now spoke for the galaxy itself. The victory had come at a price that few humans had anticipated. Captain Song Hai, who had commanded a mining station when the war began, was now governing 3 conquered alien star systems. The farmers and miners who had become soldiers were finding it difficult to return to peaceful occupations. War had changed them permanently. Dr. Yang Min was compiling the final casualty reports from the 2-year conflict. Humanity had lost nearly 1 billion people in the fighting. Both soldiers and civilians had paid the ultimate price for galactic freedom. But the alien losses were beyond calculation. Entire species had been reduced to populations that could survive on single worlds. The psychological damage to alien civilizations was even more severe than the physical destruction. Species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years had been defeated by relative newcomers. The certainty that had defined their existence for eons had been shattered by human determination and human weapons. Intelligence Officer Im Yuri was analyzing the new political structure of the galaxy. Dozens of minor species were actively seeking human protection, offering tribute and military service to avoid the fate of the major powers. The balance of power had shifted completely. Human approval was now required for any significant political decision. The most disturbing aspect of the post-war galaxy was how quickly alien populations had adapted to human rule. Administrator Bei Jun, who had been a farmer before the war, was now governing alien worlds with populations in the billions. Many aliens seemed relieved that the uncertainty was over, even if it meant living under foreign occupation. The occupied worlds were functioning better than anyone had expected. Human administrators were harsh, but generally fair. Human justice was swift and brutal when necessary. But it was also predictable. Alien populations were learning that cooperation brought rewards, while resistance brought immediate punishment. On Earth, memorials honored the billion humans who had died in the Galactic War, but the survivors had built something unprecedented. A galactic empire ruled by a species that remembered what it felt like to be powerless. The lessons of history were being applied to galactic governance with mixed results. The economic transformation was as dramatic as the political changes. Human corporations were taking control of alien industries and trade networks. The species that had once been limited to outer rim territories now controlled the most profitable sectors of galactic commerce. Wealth was flowing toward human worlds at unprecedented rates. Ambassador Park Mina was writing her memoirs about the collapse of diplomacy. Her analysis was harsh. The aliens had made the mistake of judging human civilization by human patience. They had never understood that human reasonableness was a choice, not a weakness. When that choice was withdrawn, the results were catastrophic. Medical research was revealing the long-term effects of the war on human psychology. The generation that had fought the Galactic War showed personality changes that concerned civilian leaders. They were more aggressive, more suspicious of aliens, and less willing to compromise on any issue involving human security. Young people who had grown up during the war were different from their parents. They had learned to see aliens as either subjects or potential enemies. The peaceful coexistence that previous generations had hoped for seemed impossible when one species had proven so completely dominant over all others. The former alien leaders who had survived the war were kept as examples of what happened to those who threatened humanity. Their living conditions were comfortable, but their freedom was completely gone. They served as reminders to other species about the consequences of challenging human authority. Captain Lee Hyun was now commanding the Terran Defense Fleet from Earth orbit. His ships patrolled trade routes that were more peaceful than they had been in centuries. The peace was built on fear rather than mutual respect, but it was still peace. The galaxy had learned not to challenge human interests. The refugee populations from the destroyed alien worlds were slowly being resettled on worlds designated for their species. Human authorities provided basic necessities but made it clear that their continued existence depended on good behavior. The former rulers of the galaxy had become charity cases, dependent on human generosity. Dr. An Bo was leading research into alien biology and psychology. The goal was to understand how to govern alien populations more effectively. Human rule was stable, but there were still occasional resistance movements that required military intervention. Understanding alien thought processes helped prevent larger rebellions. The irony of human victory was becoming apparent. The species that had wanted only to be left alone now controlled the fate of billions of alien beings. The responsibility was enormous, and many humans were discovering that ruling a galaxy was more difficult than conquering one. Communication networks across human space carried debates about the future. Some humans wanted to maintain military rule over alien populations indefinitely. Others believed that eventually the aliens could be trusted with limited self-governance. The discussions revealed deep divisions within human society. The transformation of human culture continued. Art and literature celebrated military victories and the glory of conquest. Children learned about famous battles and heroic soldiers. The peaceful ideals of the pre-war era were being replaced by values that emphasized strength and dominance. The final assessment was sobering. Humanity had gained control of the galaxy but had lost much of what had made them attractive as potential galactic citizens. The species that had once offered cooperation and friendship now offered only the choice between submission and destruction. The galaxy was safer, but it was also colder and more frightening than before. 5 years after the collapse of diplomacy, Ambassador Park Mina sat in the same chamber where humanity had once been denied representation. She was now the presiding officer of the reformed Galactic Council, where human delegates held absolute veto power over all major decisions. The species that had once been ignored now could not be opposed on any significant issue. The transformation was complete. Every important decision in galactic politics required human approval. Trade agreements needed human signatures. Military movements required human permission. Scientific research programs needed human oversight. The aliens had created a system where humans controlled everything they had once been excluded from. The galaxy had learned to fear human diplomacy as much as human warfare. When Ambassador Li Ji arrived at alien worlds to negotiate agreements, her diplomatic vessel was escorted by enough firepower to destroy continents. The message was clear. Humanity preferred to negotiate, but they would never again be dismissed or ignored. Captain Li Hyun had been promoted to Grand Admiral commanding forces that patrolled space lanes more peaceful than they had been in centuries. The peace was built on the certain knowledge that challenging human authority meant facing the most effective military force the galaxy had ever seen. On Earth, massive memorials honored the 1 billion humans who had died in the Galactic War. Their sacrifice had purchased something unprecedented, a galactic civilization where humans would never again be threatened with relocation or extinction. The cost had been enormous, but the result was absolute security. The survivors had built institutions designed to prevent future challenges to human dominance. The Terran Defense Academy trained officers from both human and alien worlds, but the curriculum made it clear that humans were the natural leaders of galactic civilization. Military doctrine emphasized the superiority of human tactics and human determination. Dr. Yang Min was completing her definitive history of the Galactic War. Her conclusion was both proud and troubling. Humanity had revealed its true nature, not through exploration or diplomacy, but through warfare. The species that had seemed reasonable and cooperative had proven capable of violence that shocked even themselves. The economic integration of the galaxy under human leadership was proceeding smoothly. Alien worlds provided raw materials and agricultural products while human worlds controlled manufacturing and technology. The arrangement benefited both sides but left no doubt about who held the superior position. Medical Officer Nam Ri was studying the long-term psychological effects of human victory. On both species, humans had become more confident and assertive, but also more suspicious and aggressive. Aliens had become more submissive and cooperative, but also more fearful and dependent. The war had changed everyone permanently. The educational systems throughout human space now included mandatory courses on galactic history, with emphasis on the events leading to human dominance. Students learned about the diplomatic failures that had made war inevitable and the military victories that had established human supremacy. Intelligence networks monitored alien populations for signs of resistance or rebellion. The surveillance was thorough, but not oppressive. Most aliens had accepted their new status and were focusing on rebuilding their communities under human oversight. Resistance movements were rare and quickly suppressed. The former Vorthak leadership lived on a reservation world under constant supervision. Their comfortable prison served as a reminder to other species about what happened to those who threatened human interests. The arrangement was humane by human standards but terrifying to species that valued freedom. Young aliens growing up under human rule were different from their parents. They learned human languages and human customs. They attended schools where human history and human achievements were emphasized. They were being raised to see human dominance as natural and beneficial. The space lanes that had once been contested territory were now patrolled by joint human-alien crews. The alien crew members served under human officers and followed human regulations. The integration was successful because everyone understood the consequences of challenging the system. Captain Song Hai was governing alien populations that had grown larger and more prosperous under human administration. The former miner had become an effective colonial administrator because he understood that fair treatment prevented rebellion while harsh punishment deterred resistance. The technological advancement of human civilization had accelerated dramatically. Access to alien knowledge and alien resources had allowed human scientists to make breakthroughs that would have taken centuries to achieve independently. The war had not only brought political dominance but also scientific supremacy. Cultural exchange between species was carefully managed to prevent misunderstandings that could lead to conflict. Human authorities encouraged alien art and literature that celebrated the benefits of the new order, while discouraging works that questioned human leadership. The final irony belonged to the Vorthak Empire, the species whose ultimatum had triggered the Galactic War. The survivors lived on worlds similar to the reservation planets they had once planned for humanity. Their situation was comfortable, but their freedom was limited. The former conquerors had become the conquered communication between human worlds, carried ongoing debates about the future of galactic civilization. Some leaders advocated for gradual integration of alien species into positions of responsibility. Others insisted that military dominance should be maintained indefinitely. The discussions revealed continuing uncertainty about long-term goals. Religious and philosophical movements within human society were grappling with the moral implications of galactic conquest. Some groups celebrated human victory as proof of divine favor. Others worried that dominance over other species was corrupting human values. The debates reflected deep divisions about human identity. The galaxy was entering a new age of stability and prosperity under human leadership. Trade flourished under the protection of human fleets. Scientific research advanced through cooperation between species. Cultural exchange enriched both human and alien civilizations. The system worked, but it was built on the foundation of fear. Grand Admiral Li Hyun reflected on the transformation of human civilization, from peaceful explorers to galactic rulers. The change had been necessary for survival, but it had cost humanity much of what had made them admirable. The species that had offered friendship to the galaxy now offered only the choice between cooperation and conquest. The new order was stable, prosperous, and peaceful. It was also authoritarian, hierarchical, and built on the memory of terrible violence. The galaxy had learned that humanity preferred cooperation, but excelled at domination. In a universe where peace required strength, humans had proven they possessed strength beyond measure. The collapse of diplomacy had taught every species in the galaxy a lesson that would echo through the centuries. Humanity had tried to earn respect through reason and good faith. When that failed, they had earned respect through fear and overwhelming force. The galaxy would never again mistake human patience for human weakness.